On this episode of What's Going On with Shipping, UK pilots prevent the grounding of the MOL treasure. Hi, I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So we've been talking a lot about pilots. Pilots are those who board vessels and assist the docking and undocking of them. Unfortunately, the most recent story had the death of a British pilot in the Humber not too long ago. But today's story is a little bit different. It is about not just one, but three pilots who prevented the grounding of a mega container ship in the Solent just south of Southampton. And I want to talk about it because it's a great news story, and we don't get enough great news stories. So I thought I'd throw that one in for today. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. All right, let's jump into our story about pilots. Now, typically when we talk about pilots, we talk about these, the death-defying Airedales that are out there flying us from point A to point B in travel. They're the mavericks of our day, but these aren't the pilots I'm talking about. The pilots I'm talking about aren't usually worried about dying when they get on board the vessel they're going to be steering, unless you're boarding in Newark or LaGuardia. Then you may worry a little bit about your death. No, I am talking about ship pilots. And ship pilots board this unique way from the ocean, have to climb up on board a Jacob's ladder onto a vessel, and then navigate it. So it's not exactly the easiest way of doing business. And if they don't have to embark that way, they have to disembark that way. So ship's pilots have a very unique method of getting on and off vessels. The story in particular is this one. Mike Schuller over at G-Captain had this. Pilots praised for preventing Megaship from grounding in Southampton waters. The story was based on a news release from the United Kingdom's Maritime Pilot Association, supporting pilots and protecting trade. A great site. I will have it in the show notes. If you want to take a moment to take a look at the site, please do. I think my favorite thing here isn't just the fact that they have a magazine, which you can read, but you can talk about the Merchant Marine Medal that the British give to mariners on a yearly basis. Man, why do we not do that more often in the United States and in other countries? Just an awesome thing to do. They get it from Princess Anne, which is just fantastic, I gotta say. Very jealous of the British for knowing how to treat merchant mariners. But this is the story that was released from the United Kingdom's Maritime Pilot Association, and I just want to read a little bit of it for you, a couple of passages here, and give you an idea. The motor vessel MOL Treasure. MOL, this is a company that was morphed into what became ONE, the Ocean Network Express. MOL was one of three Japanese firms, but the ships still have the names. An ultra-large container ship departed the port of Southampton at around 1100 bound for Le Havre. For pilots Captain Christopher Hoyle and Captain Neil Dunn, this should have been a routine act of pilotage, but nevertheless one which only very experienced pilots are authorized to do given the size of the vessel. At 400 meters long, with the capacity to carry 20,000 20-foot containers, those are TEUs. The weather conditions were good, although gusty, with clear visibility and a calm sea state. No more than an hour into the passage, the MOL Treasure developed a significant reduction in engine power. So this is what we call dropping the plant. When you start losing power and you don't have the maneuverability you once had, you're dropping the plant. Now, it's not clear if she lost complete power, just some power, not exactly articulated here in the story. Thankfully, an escort tug was already in attendance, and Southampton Vessel Traffic Service, so VTS, the Vessel Traffic Service, these are kind of like the FAA guiding ships in and out, but they don't have that type of authority as the FAA. They basically monitor ships coming in, usually assign them anchorages, telling them where they're going to meet their pilots. Basically, they try to keep the vessel's traffic moving and prevent collisions and aid vessels as needed. The VTS deployed a further 3 tugs to assist the pilots and vessel to remain safely controlled within the navigation channels at all times for 10 hours. That's a long, long time to be maneuvering a vessel. Whilst the chief engineer set about trying to identify the issue with the engines, it's more than just chief engineer, it's all the engineers at this point. Pilots Hoyle and Dunn worked with the tugs to keep the ship from drifting and grounding. This was only possible due to the unique understanding of the waters in the very tricky tidal area of the Solent. It goes on here to talk about that a third pilot, Captain Richard Harding, boarded the vessel so that the pilots could tag team, as 2 pilots are always needed to pilot a ship of this size. And then finally, shortly before midnight, after more than 10 hours with only significantly reduced power available, the MOL Treasure was safely maneuvered back to port. So a couple of things here. I don't know if the 2 pilots on board were full pilots or one was an apprentice pilot or not. That would kind of explain bringing the 3rd pilot out. But again, one of the things that is necessary is because of the size of this vessel. Again, if you think about it, this vessel is about nearly 200 feet wide. So if you're at both ends of the bridge wing, that's a long distance to be in, and you kind of do need a tag team. The other thing they talk about here is the unique nature of the Solent, and I want to talk about this. This is the Solent right here. So here's Southampton, here's the English Channel. This is the narrowest part. This is up here in the North Sea. Here's France and England. This is this is Calais. The 22-mile stretch. Down here is Normandy and the peninsula. Then out into the English Channel, the islands of Jersey and Guernsey. And then out past the Lizard, out into the Atlantic. And here's the Isle of Wight. And so the English Channel has a tide that runs through it. You have a big tide that runs in and out of the English Channel. And at the same time, the Isle of Wight is here, and you have water that pours in out off England, off rivers, into the area, and the tide actually gets caught up here in the Solent. So you have a very unique kind of movement of water in and out of this area. And this means that your movement in and out of this area is very difficult. The tide in the Solent is difficult. Add to it, you're on a 20,000 box ship, which means you have wind factors. The wind is going to play havoc with you, blowing you around the area. So it takes a lot with minimal power, using tugs, to keep the ship from twisting and spinning and wanting to go up on embankments, shoal water. You've got a narrow area. You can keep the ship in deep water. It is a tough chore to bring it in. And you'd sit there and say, well, why don't they just tow it back in? Well, it could be that the situation was such that you don't want to tow it back in without propulsion, because the tugs may not be able to handle her without the power on the vessel. So for 10 hours, and again, that's a long time to be doing that, they were able to keep this vessel from grounding. An exceptionally great job by not just the pilots, but the crew, the engine crew, the tugboats, the VTS system. It's a team thing. It's not one person who ever does this stuff. It is a team effort, and we've seen lots of groundings recently. We saw groundings of a container ship coming out of a port hitting a jetty. We had one last year coming into, I think it was Bremerhaven or Hamburg, where it grounded. One coming out of Brazil where it grounded. This happens, especially these mega ships. And of course, we've got the big examples of ships like Ever Forward coming out of Baltimore and Ever Given down in the Suez. Matter of fact, just today, we had an LNG tanker northbound in the Suez lose power, grounded in the canal. She was moved off very quickly. Traffic was able to flow. They got her up in the Great Bitter Lake without any problems. But this story was a really good story, so I really wanted to share it. Right now, the vessel is off the coast of Le Havre, off Normandy. You see her steaming out there. There is MOL Treasure, a Panama registered vessel. Move this over here so you can see it a little better. There you go. She's a Panama flag vessel sitting there off the coast of Normandy right now, waiting to come into Le Havre. She's just steaming around at about 2 knots, waiting to go in. So a great story. We don't get enough of these, so I thought I'd share it with you just because I thought that, again, lots of gloom and doom sometimes, but when pilots are doing a great job, and I made a joke the other day, and I was kidding with airline pilots. Do not take my jokes ever seriously. Airline pilots do a fantastic job, but I wanted to bring attention to ships pilots because I don't think they get the attention they deserve. They do an amazing job, an extremely dangerous job. Again, climbing on and off a ship, moving at sea is wickedly dangerous. Unless you've ever done it before, you can look at it, and lots of times you'll see it done in very calm, clean weather, especially on cruise ships coming in and out of ports. But when you're out there off the coast of some of these ports in pretty bad weather, chop, and you got to board, and more importantly, when you got to get off. I think getting on is, I think, easier than getting off. Getting off is a big chore because you got to time it just right to get on the pilot boat. This is not an easy thing to do, and I like bringing attention to different facets of the maritime industry that doesn't resonate with most people. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos. as they come out. Leave a comment, give it a thumbs up, share it across social media, and if you can, support the page. You can do that by hitting that super thanks button below or becoming a patron of the page. Head on over to Patreon and become a monthly, yearly subscriber. Until the next video, which will be our What the Ship, our weekly episode, top 5 stories across the maritime spectrum, will be coming soon, so make sure you subscribe and hit that bell. Until our next video, this is Sal, signing off.